A chance encounter under the blazing sun. The sun blazed mercilessly over the stretch of rural highway as James Calloway adjusted his designer sunglasses, leaning against his gleaming black Rolls-Royce. The air shimmered with heat, and the buzzing of cicadas provided the only company. At 74, James had seen the pinnacle of wealth and power. A self-made billionaire, his days were spent in boardrooms and ballrooms, surrounded by polished smiles and calculated pleasantries. Yet here he was, stranded on the side of a nearly deserted road, defeated by a flat tire. His manicured hands fumbled with his phone, searching for a signal. The glowing screen mocked him with a frustrating no-service message. A sigh escaped his lips as he leaned back against the car, his tailored suit wilting under the unrelenting heat. This was not how he envisioned his day. He was on his way to a retreat at his secluded estate, a weekend meant for solitude, far from the prying eyes of the world and the weight of his corporate empire. Just as James was preparing himself for an extended wait, the crunch of gravel caught his attention. He turned to see a boy, no older than 13, walking along the road. The boy's clothes were worn, his sneakers dusty from countless miles. A tattered backpack hung from his shoulder, and his face was sunburnt yet cheerful. He stopped a few feet away, squinting up at James. "Excuse me, sir, do you need some help?" the boy asked, his voice steady yet tinged with concern. James raised an eyebrow, his initial instinct to brush off the offer. He was used to solving problems himself, or, more accurately, paying others to solve them for him. But something about the boy's earnest expression gave him pause. There was no hint of guile or expectation, just a genuine desire to help. "Are you serious, young man?" James asked skeptically, gesturing toward the flat tire. "It's a bit of a mess." The boy smiled and shrugged. "I've seen worse. My dad taught me how to fix tires before he passed. I can get you back on the road in no time. Name's Alex, by the way." James hesitated, glancing at the oppressive sun. His pride warred with his practicality, but practicality won. "All right, Alex. If you think you can manage, I'd be grateful." Without another word, Alex swung his backpack to the ground and set to work. His movements were swift and practiced, as though he'd done this 100 times before. He pulled the jack from the car's trunk and positioned it beneath the chassis, explaining each step to James as he worked. "You see, it's all about balance," Alex said, his voice steady as he cranked the jack. "If you don't get it just right, the car could slip, and that's no good for anyone." James watched in amazement as the boy worked, his small hands deftly loosening lug nuts and fitting the spare tire. Beads of sweat dripped down Alex's temple, but he remained focused, humming a tune as he went. For James, who was used to the polished efficiency of professionals, this raw display of skill and determination was both humbling and inspiring. "You're quite the mechanic," James remarked, genuinely impressed. Alex chuckled. "Not really. Just picked up a thing or two helping my mom. She says you've got to be ready for anything, you know, especially when you don't have much." James felt a pang of guilt at the boy's words. He had spent his life amassing wealth and influence, yet here was a child who faced life's challenges with resilience and optimism. For a moment, he envied the boy's strength of spirit. As Alex tightened the last lug nut, he stood and wiped his greasy hands on his jeans. "There you go, sir. Good as new." James reached into his wallet, pulling out a crisp $100 bill. "Please, take this. It's the least I can do for your time and effort." But Alex shook his head firmly, stepping back. "Thanks, but no thanks. My mom says kindness doesn't count if you expect something in return. Just pay it forward, okay?" Before James could protest, Alex grabbed his backpack and started walking down the road, his silhouette growing smaller in the distance. James stood there, the bill still in his hand, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and shame. The boy had reminded him of something he hadn't thought about in years: the power of selfless kindness. That evening, back in his sprawling penthouse overlooking the city, James couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. His usual routine, pouring a glass of scotch, scrolling through business reports, felt hollow. He found himself staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights glittering below. Despite his wealth, he couldn't remember the last time someone had helped him without expecting anything in return. His thoughts drifted to his own childhood, growing up in a small town with hardworking parents who had instilled in him the value of integrity. Over the years, as success consumed his life, those values had taken a backseat to ambition. But now, thanks to a chance meeting with a boy on the side of the road, James felt a stirring of something he hadn't felt in decades: purpose. As the night stretched on, James made a decision. He didn't know how, but he was determined to find Alex and repay the boy's kindness. Not with money, but with something far more meaningful. For the first time in years, James felt a spark of excitement, a sense of direction that went beyond profit margins and corporate deals. Little did he know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Into the world of Alex. The next morning, James awoke with a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in years. The memory of Alex's sincere smile and selfless kindness lingered like a soft echo in his mind. For a man who thrived on strategy and execution, there was no room for hesitation. James pulled out his laptop and began searching for information. The boy had said his name was Alex, and they were on Pine Grove Road, not too far from a small rural community. After a few hours of scrolling through public directories and local community groups, James realized the task was more daunting than he'd expected. Yet the challenge only fueled his resolve. Wealth had made him efficient at solving problems, and this was no different. He decided to visit the town himself. Perhaps someone there could point him in the right direction. James donned casual attire, a rare departure from his tailored suits, and took the drive to the quaint community of Pine Grove. As he passed modest homes and family-owned businesses, he felt a sense of nostalgia for a simpler time. Pine Grove was a world away from the towering skyscrapers and bustling streets he was used to. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, a place he hadn't seen since his own childhood. Pulling up to the town square, James parked near a general store and stepped out, his polished demeanor clashing slightly with the rustic charm of his surroundings. The store's wooden sign creaked in the breeze, and the smell of fresh-baked bread wafted through the air. As he entered, a bell chimed, and a friendly older woman behind the counter greeted him. "Morning, sir. What can I do for you today?" she asked, her voice warm and welcoming. James hesitated briefly before deciding honesty was the best approach. "Good morning. I'm looking for someone. A young boy named Alex. He helped me yesterday with a flat tire just outside town. He mentioned his mother works hard to support him, but I didn't get much more information than that. I'd like to thank him properly." The woman's face softened, and a knowing smile spread across her lips. "Ah, you must mean Alex Carter. Sweet boy. Always helping folks around here. His mama, Lydia, works double shifts at the diner most days, and Alex keeps himself busy with odd jobs in school. They live just down the road from here in the little blue house with the porch full of flower pots. Can't miss it." James nodded, grateful for the information. "Thank you. I appreciate your help." As he exited the store, a thought struck him. This was his chance not only to find Alex, but also to understand his world. Before heading to the boy's house, he decided to stop by the diner the woman had mentioned. The Pine Grove Diner was a small, bustling establishment, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of frying bacon hanging in the air. Behind the counter, a woman with kind eyes and a tired smile moved deftly between orders. She wore a simple uniform and had her hair tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail. James knew instantly that this was Lydia Carter. He took a seat at the counter, scanning the menu for something simple. When Lydia approached, pad and pen in hand, her voice was calm but efficient. "What can I get you, sir?" "Just coffee for now," James replied, watching her closely. "You must be Lydia. I've heard about you and your son, Alex." Lydia blinked in surprise, her expression shifting to a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Alex? Did something happen to him?" James quickly shook his head. "No, nothing like that. Your son helped me yesterday when I was stranded on the side of the road. He was kind enough to fix my flat tire and refused to take any payment. I wanted to thank him. And you, for raising such a remarkable boy." Lydia's face softened, though her weariness was still evident. "That sounds like Alex, all right. He's a good kid, always looking out for others, even when he doesn't have much himself. Thank you for saying that." As she poured his coffee, James decided to learn more. "It seems like you've done an incredible job raising him. May I ask how you've managed, especially with the challenges you faced?" Lydia hesitated, her eyes flicking around the diner as though searching for an escape. But something about James's tone, genuine and curious, encouraged her to answer. "Well, it hasn't been easy," she admitted, setting the coffee pot down. "My husband passed away 3 years ago, and it's been just me and Alex since. I work here and pick up shifts wherever I can to make ends meet. Alex does what he can to help. Odd jobs, mowing lawns, you name it. He's got big dreams of becoming an engineer one day, and I'll do whatever it takes to help him get there." James felt a pang of admiration for this woman who had faced life's hardships with such dignity. Her pride and love for her son were evident, and it only deepened his resolve to do something meaningful for them. After finishing his coffee, James paid his bill and left a generous tip. As he exited the diner, he felt the weight of the responsibility he was about to undertake. It wasn't just about repaying a favor anymore. It was about making a lasting impact on 2 lives that deserved far more than they had been given. When James finally arrived at the little blue house, he found Alex outside, tending to a small garden by the porch. The boy's face lit up with recognition when he saw James step out of the car. "Mr. Calloway," Alex exclaimed, brushing dirt off his hands. "What are you doing here?" James smiled warmly, walking up to the boy. "I came to thank you properly, Alex, and I wanted to see the world you're so proud of. Is your mother home?" Alex tilted his head, curiosity dancing in his eyes. "She's not back from work yet, but I can show you around." James followed Alex through the modest yard, listening intently as the boy explained how he and his mother had built the garden together to save money on groceries. Despite its size, the garden was thriving, filled with vibrant tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. Alex's enthusiasm was infectious, and James couldn't help but be drawn into his world. As they walked, James asked, "Alex, what made you stop to help me yesterday? You didn't know who I was or what I could offer in return." Alex shrugged, his expression thoughtful. "I guess I just saw someone who needed help. Mom always says the world's a better place when you put kindness out there. Besides, you looked like you could use a hand." James laughed, the boy's straightforward honesty catching him off guard. "Well, you were right. I could use more than a hand. I could use a lesson in kindness." The boy smiled, but his modesty betrayed a deeper wisdom. "I think we all could, sir." As they stood on the porch, James's eyes swept over the house. It was well kept but showed signs of wear. A sagging roof, peeling paint, and windows that had seen better days. It was a home filled with love, but in need of care. James's mind raced with possibilities, each more ambitious than the last. For the first time in years, he felt inspired. This wasn't just an act of charity. It was a chance to honor the values that Alex and Lydia embodied: resilience, humility, and selflessness. And as James left the Carter home that evening, he carried with him not just a plan, but a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life for far too long. Little did Alex and Lydia know, their simple act of kindness was about to change everything, for all of them. The seeds of change. James returned to his penthouse that evening with a mind brimming with possibilities. The encounter with Alex and Lydia had awakened something dormant inside him. A desire not just to repay their kindness, but to truly make a difference in their lives. This wasn't about money or status. It was about gratitude, about connection, about rediscovering a purpose he hadn't realized he'd lost. Sitting at his mahogany desk, James spread out a blank sheet of paper and began to write. His pen moved with a determination he hadn't felt in years, each stroke building upon a vision that would honor the Carter family's spirit while preserving their dignity. The following morning, James was back on the road, this time heading to his company's regional office. While retired from day-to-day operations, he still maintained a strong influence over the organization. Once there, he met with his trusted confidant and former chief of staff, Margaret, an astute and resourceful woman who had been by his side for over 2 decades. "James," Margaret said warmly as he entered her office, "what brings you here so early? You've been conspicuously absent from corporate matters lately." James chuckled, settling into a chair across from her. "I need your help with something, Margaret. But it's not business-related, at least not in the traditional sense." Margaret raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Go on." James leaned forward, recounting the events of the past 2 days. The flat tire, Alex's selfless assistance, and the glimpse into the Carters' modest but vibrant world. Margaret listened intently, her sharp mind already piecing together the implications. "I want to help them, Margaret," James concluded, "but not in a way that feels transactional. It has to be meaningful, something that uplifts them without diminishing their pride. And I need your expertise to make it happen." Margaret smiled, a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. "Well, James, this is a side of you I haven't seen in years. It's refreshing. Let's start with the basics. What do they need?" James thought for a moment. "Their home needs repairs, a new roof, better windows, plumbing upgrades. But more than that, I want to invest in their future. Alex has dreams of becoming an engineer, and Lydia deserves an opportunity to advance her nursing career. I want to make both possible." Margaret nodded, already scribbling notes. "We'll start with the house. I know a few contractors who can work discreetly and efficiently. As for Alex's education, we can set up a trust fund for his college expenses. For Lydia, perhaps a scholarship program tailored to working adults in healthcare." James felt a wave of relief at her efficient response. "That's exactly what I was hoping for. But one more thing. I don't want them to know this is all from me. At least not yet. I want them to feel like they've earned it, not like it's a handout." Margaret's smile widened. "Understood. We'll keep it anonymous for now. Let me handle the logistics." Over the next few weeks, a quiet transformation began to unfold. Contractors arrived at the Carter home, introducing themselves as part of a community initiative funded by anonymous donors. They replaced the aging roof, repainted the exterior, and upgraded the windows to energy-efficient models. Inside, they modernized the kitchen and bathroom, ensuring the house was not only functional but also comfortable. Alex was initially wary of the sudden improvements. "Mom, why would someone do this for us?" he asked one evening as they admired the freshly painted living room walls. Lydia, equally puzzled but grateful, smiled softly. "Maybe someone out there sees how hard we've been working and wanted to lend a hand. Sometimes kindness comes back to you in unexpected ways." Meanwhile, James worked behind the scenes to secure Alex's future. With Margaret's help, he established a scholarship fund specifically for Pine Grove students with a passion for engineering and technology. The first recipient, of course, would be Alex, though the program would extend to others in the community as well. For Lydia, they arranged for her to receive a grant that covered tuition and living expenses for a nursing practitioner program. The grant was presented as part of a regional healthcare initiative, ensuring that she felt it was a well-deserved opportunity rather than a charity. One afternoon, as James walked through the bustling streets of the city, he spotted something that stopped him in his tracks. In the window of a small bookstore, a display showcased titles about community, kindness, and resilience. At the center was a book he hadn't thought about in decades, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. The sight of it brought a lump to his throat. He stepped into the store and purchased the book, running his fingers over the familiar cover. It was a story he'd read as a child, a story about selfless love and giving. He decided, then and there, that he would deliver this book to Alex, a token of gratitude and a symbol of the lessons they had both taught each other. On a crisp autumn evening, James returned to the Carter home. This time, he carried a gift bag containing the book and a handwritten note. As he approached the house, the warm glow of the lights spilling from the windows reminded him of his own humble beginnings. Alex answered the door, his face lighting up with recognition. "Mr. Calloway, it's good to see you again. Come in." James stepped inside, marveling at the changes. The once-worn home now exuded a sense of hope and possibility. He handed Alex the bag, smiling. "This is for you, a small token of appreciation." Alex opened the bag and pulled out the book, his eyes widening. "The Giving Tree. I read this in school once. It's one of my favorites." James nodded, his voice warm. "It's a story that meant a lot to me as a child. And now, thanks to you and your mother, it means even more. You've reminded me of what truly matters." As Alex flipped through the pages, Lydia appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "Mr. Calloway, what a surprise. Would you like to stay for dinner?" James hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I'd be honored." Over a simple but delicious meal, the three of them talked and laughed, sharing stories of their lives. For James, it was a moment of pure connection, a far cry from the isolated luxury of his penthouse. As the evening drew to a close, James felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He realized that the seeds of change he had planted were not just for Alex and Lydia, but for himself as well. In helping them, he had rediscovered the joy of giving, the beauty of community, and the power of human connection. And though neither Alex nor Lydia knew the full extent of his involvement in their newfound opportunities, James felt no need for recognition. Their smiles, their laughter, and their unwavering resilience were reward enough. For the first time in decades, he felt truly rich, not in wealth, but in purpose. The ripple effect. Months passed, and the Carter home blossomed in ways that even James hadn't fully anticipated. With the roof repaired, the windows replaced, and the inside upgraded to accommodate Lydia's medical needs, the family began to thrive in a way that was tangible. The transformation wasn't just physical. Something deeper had shifted. It was as though the weight of their struggles had lifted, if only just a little, allowing them to breathe more freely. But the changes extended beyond their walls. The scholarship for Alex and the grant for Lydia became the catalyst for something larger than James had envisioned. As word spread of the Carters' good fortune, more opportunities began to open up within Pine Grove, and soon the entire community began to feel the effects of that one small act of kindness. It started with Alex. His grades had always been good, but now that the scholarship was in place, his focus sharpened. He threw himself into his studies with newfound dedication. No longer burdened by the thought of college being out of reach, he began to dream more boldly. He spent hours each evening in the makeshift workshop his mother had set up in the garage, building simple robots and tinkering with broken electronics. His curiosity grew, and so did his confidence. One afternoon, Alex's teacher, Mrs. Collins, stopped by the house to drop off a forgotten textbook. As she entered the living room, her eyes widened at the sight of Alex working on a small circuit board. "You're really making progress, aren't you?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine admiration. Alex grinned, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Yeah, I'm working on a robot that can clean up trash. I know it sounds silly, but I think it could help with the litter problem in town." Mrs. Collins looked at him thoughtfully. "Alex, I think you're onto something. I know a few people who could help you with this, maybe even get you funding. You've got the mind of an engineer, and if you keep going at it like this, you might be able to turn your idea into a real project." The thought of his small invention being taken seriously thrilled Alex. Really, that would be amazing. Within days, Mrs. Collins had arranged a meeting between Alex and a local entrepreneur, Mr. Henderson, who had a small tech startup in Pine Grove. Mr. Henderson had heard about the scholarship program, funded by an anonymous donor, and he was eager to meet the young student who was behind the innovative idea. When Alex met Mr. Henderson, the meeting was brief but impactful. The entrepreneur was impressed by Alex's passion and his drive. "I've been looking for someone like you, Alex," he said. "I've got some resources that could help you develop this project. Let's see where we can take this." The door to Alex's future had just cracked open, and he was about to walk through it with more determination than ever before. Little did he know that his small idea would soon have far-reaching effects on the entire community. Meanwhile, Lydia had also found her life taking unexpected turns. Her acceptance into the nursing practitioner program had opened up new opportunities, and with the scholarship covering her tuition and living expenses, she was able to focus entirely on her studies. She found herself thriving in a way she hadn't in years. Though the demands of the program were intense, she felt a sense of purpose and pride she hadn't experienced since her late husband had passed. But it wasn't just her career that was changing. Lydia's newfound stability allowed her to become more involved in the Pine Grove community. She began volunteering at the local clinic, offering free health screenings for low-income families, and helping organize health awareness programs. Her empathy, combined with her growing medical expertise, made her a beloved figure in the town. One afternoon, as Lydia was leaving the clinic after a particularly long day, she ran into an old acquaintance, Grace, who was the head of the local food pantry. "Lydia," Grace called out, waving her hand. "I've been meaning to speak with you." Lydia smiled and greeted her. "Hey, Grace. What's going on?" "I've been thinking about this for a while," Grace said, her voice laced with urgency. "We've got a real shortage of volunteers for the food pantry this winter. The donations have been down, and we're going to need all the help we can get. I know you've been busy with school, but if you're able to lend a hand, it would make such a difference." Lydia hesitated, torn between her studies and the opportunity to help her community. But then she thought about how much she had been given, how much she had gained in just a few short months, and she knew, deep down, that this was the right thing to do. "I'd be honored," she said. "Just let me know what you need." Grace beamed. "Thank you, Lydia. You have no idea how much this means to all of us." It wasn't long before Lydia had become a cornerstone of the food pantry initiative. She helped organize drives, distribute meals, and offer medical advice to families who needed it. Through her work, Lydia not only built a deeper connection with the community, but she also found a renewed sense of purpose in giving back. The ripple effect of James's decision to help the Carters was spreading throughout Pine Grove, and James was beginning to realize the profound impact that even the smallest act of kindness could have. One afternoon, as James sat in his study, he received a call from Margaret. "James, you won't believe what's happening in Pine Grove. I just got off the phone with Mrs. Collins. She's been in touch with a few other schools about Alex's robot project. There's a real chance that he could get this off the ground. The tech community is taking notice, and we might even have some investors interested." James leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. "I knew that boy had something special. He's got the spirit of an inventor, and now he's got the support he needs to make it happen." Margaret continued, her voice tinged with excitement. "And Lydia's been doing incredible work at the food pantry. People are coming together in ways I haven't seen in years. The impact is real, James. You've started something truly remarkable." As he listened to Margaret's words, James felt a profound sense of fulfillment. His involvement had been modest, helping to provide resources and opportunities. But the real work, the true transformation, had come from Alex, Lydia, and their community. Later that evening, as James stood on the balcony of his penthouse, looking out over the city, he thought about how much had changed in his life over the past few months. He had begun with the intention of helping a single family, but now he saw how much that one decision had touched the lives of so many others. Alex was on the verge of turning his dreams into reality, and Lydia was helping to heal the town in ways that only she could. James realized, with a quiet satisfaction, that his greatest legacy might not be the businesses he had built or the wealth he had accumulated, but the lives he had touched. In helping the Carters, he had found something far more valuable than riches. He had found a connection to something greater than himself. And so, the ripple effect of kindness continued to spread, one small action leading to another, creating a community bound together by shared values of generosity, compassion, and the belief that even the smallest act can change everything. The unseen bonds. As the months passed, Pine Grove began to transform in ways no one could have predicted. The ripple effect from James's quiet generosity, which had started with a simple act of kindness, was reaching far beyond his initial intentions. And as for the Carters, the changes in their lives were more profound than they had ever imagined. For Alex, each day felt like a new opportunity. His world had expanded beyond the confines of Pine Grove, beyond the small garage where he had once dreamed of building robots. With the help of Mr. Henderson and the resources he offered, Alex's trash-collecting robot prototype had come to life. Now it was more than just a school project. It had the potential to change the way their town dealt with waste. Word of his work spread quickly. What had started as a simple school science project was now attracting attention from local businesses, schools, and even the regional government. Pine Grove, once a quiet and overlooked town, was now the site of a groundbreaking project. Alex's robot, which he had affectionately named Eco, was set to be used in local parks and streets to help clean up litter and reduce waste. The community rallied around Alex's invention, and local schools began to incorporate his work into their curriculum, teaching students about the importance of sustainability, engineering, and innovation. Alex's dream of becoming an engineer had always seemed distant, but now it was becoming a tangible reality. On the day of the robot's first official demonstration, the town gathered to watch as Eco sprang to life. Alex stood proudly beside it, explaining to a crowd of parents, teachers, and local leaders how his invention worked. As the robot roamed the park, picking up trash and sorting recyclables, the crowd erupted into applause. It was a moment Alex would never forget, one where he saw his hard work and passion come to fruition. "Alex," Mrs. Collins said, beaming with pride, "you've done something amazing. This is just the beginning for you. Do you know how many people are going to be inspired by what you've created?" Alex's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I never imagined it would turn into something like this. It feels unreal." And yet, it wasn't just Eco that had changed Alex's life. It was the entire process. He had learned the value of perseverance, the power of community support, and the importance of dreaming big. His journey had begun with one person offering help on the side of a road, but now it had grown into a movement. As for Lydia, her life had also taken an unexpected turn. Her nursing program, which had seemed like a distant dream when she first started, was now something she could see on the horizon. She was excelling in her classes, and her confidence grew as she realized just how much she was capable of. With every passing day, Lydia became more skilled, more knowledgeable, and more determined to make a difference in her field. But it wasn't just her career that was flourishing. Lydia's work at the food pantry had deepened her sense of purpose. The sense of community she had longed for in Pine Grove was finally taking shape, and she had become a pillar of support for those who needed it most. One afternoon, as she was organizing a food drive with Grace at the local church, she noticed a mother and child standing off to the side, hesitating to approach the table where boxes of food were being handed out. The woman looked tired, her clothes worn thin from years of hard work, and Lydia could sense the unease in her posture. "Are you all right?" Lydia asked, walking over to them. The woman nodded, but her eyes were filled with uncertainty. "I'm sorry, I just don't know if I should take anything. I don't want to impose." Lydia smiled softly, placing a gentle hand on the woman's arm. "You're not imposing. You're here because you need help, and that's okay. We're all here for each other." The woman hesitated for a moment. then nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you. We've been struggling, and I don't know how we're going to make it through this winter." Lydia handed her a box of food, then sat down beside her. "It's going to be all right. You're not alone. I know what it's like to struggle, and I know it's tough. But I promise you, this community is here to help." The woman took a deep breath, wiping her eyes. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Lydia replied. "Just know that you're not alone." That moment, small as it seemed, had a profound effect on Lydia. It wasn't about the food or the material assistance she had provided. It was the act of offering someone a place to feel seen, heard, and supported. It was the same sense of connection that she had found through her own struggles, and now she was passing it forward, one person at a time. James, from his position of influence, watched these changes unfold with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had set out to help the single family, but what he had unintentionally ignited was something much bigger, a wave of goodwill that was sweeping through Pine Grove, transforming it in ways that no one could have predicted. As the months passed, he continued to keep in touch with the Carters, but never with any expectation of recognition or acknowledgement. He had learned that sometimes the most powerful acts of kindness are those that are done quietly, without fanfare or reward. One evening, after hearing about Alex's latest achievements and Lydia's volunteer work, James decided to visit Pine Grove once again. This time, he wanted to see firsthand the difference that his decision to help had made. He drove slowly through the town, observing the bustling streets, the people who had come together to support one another, and the subtle changes that had taken place over the months. As he neared the Carter's house, he felt a strange sense of anticipation. When he arrived, Lydia was outside, tending to the garden that she and Alex had nurtured together. She looked up in surprise as she saw James walking up the path toward her. "Mr. Calloway," Lydia said with a smile, "what brings you here?" James paused for a moment before answering, his voice filled with emotion. "I came to see how things were going. I wanted to see how you and Alex are doing, how your community is doing. I've heard so much about the amazing work you both are doing." Lydia's smile widened, and she gestured for him to sit on the porch. "Well, things have been better than I could have ever hoped. Alex has his scholarship, he's working on his projects, and I'm on my way to becoming a nurse practitioner. It's not perfect, but it's more than we had before." James sat down beside her, feeling a wave of pride wash over him. "You've both worked so hard. I'm just glad I could be a small part of it." Lydia shook her head. "You've been more than just a small part. You've helped us see the world in a different way. You've made us believe in possibilities again." James looked out over the garden, the rows of vegetables that Alex had tended so carefully. "It's amazing what can happen when people help each other. I never imagined that by helping one family, I could help so many." Lydia's gaze softened. "Sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe in you, to make you see that there's more out there. And then it spreads. That's what you've done for us." For the first time in years, James felt truly content. He had found his purpose not in wealth or influence, but in the quiet, unspoken bonds of community. It was the kind of richness that couldn't be measured in dollars or accolades. It was the kind of wealth that was priceless, yet simple, the wealth of connection, of giving, of changing lives. As he left the Carter home that evening, James felt lighter than he had in years. The town was still small, still humble, but now it was something more. It was a place where kindness had become a currency more valuable than any fortune he could amass. And in that moment, he realized that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along: the legacy of kindness. The seasons began to shift, and Pine Grove, once a town overshadowed by larger cities and forgotten by the world, now felt alive with possibility. With each passing day, the changes brought about by James's quiet acts of kindness became more evident. The Carters' lives were thriving, and the ripple effect from their small act of help had spread across the community, creating a sense of unity and purpose that had not existed before. Alex, now a senior in high school, had become a local legend. His trash-collecting robot, Eco, had not only revolutionized the town's approach to waste management, but it had also earned him a scholarship to a prestigious engineering school. The local press covered his story regularly, and schools across the region began to invite him to speak at events. He had become a beacon of hope for the younger generation, a symbol of what could be achieved with hard work, dedication, and a little bit of help when it was needed most. But despite his newfound fame, Alex remained grounded. He still worked on Eco in the garage, tweaking the design and dreaming of new ways to improve it. He had learned the value of humility and the importance of staying true to one's roots, even as the world began to recognize his talents. Every time he walked through the streets of Pine Grove, he was greeted with smiles and congratulations, but he never forgot the people who had helped him get there, the community that had believed in him, his mother, and of course, James. One afternoon, as Alex sat at the local cafe, he received a phone call that made his heart race. It was from the director of the engineering program at the university he had applied to. His hand shook as he answered the call. "Hello, Alex," the voice on the other end asked, warm and welcoming. "Yes, this is Alex," he replied, trying to mask the nerves in his voice. "Alex, I'm pleased to inform you that we've accepted your application. You've been awarded a full scholarship to our engineering program. We've been incredibly impressed with your work on Eco and your passion for sustainability. We believe you have a bright future ahead of you." Alex blinked in disbelief. I got in." "You did," the director confirmed. "We're excited to see what you'll achieve next." Alex felt a lump in his throat. The realization of how far he had come overwhelmed him. He had worked so hard, and now it was all paying off. He hung up the phone and sat there for a moment, letting the news sink in. This wasn't just a scholarship. It was a new life, a chance to make his mark on the world. Later that evening, when Alex shared the news with Lydia, her eyes welled with tears of pride. "I knew you could do it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've always known you were destined for something great." Alex smiled, the weight of years of hard work and sacrifice finally beginning to feel worthwhile. "It's all thanks to you, Mom. You never gave up on me, even when things were tough." While Alex's future was unfolding, Lydia was also finding her place in the world. The nursing practitioner program she had entered was challenging, but she had found a new sense of purpose. She spent long hours studying, but she never lost sight of the importance of her community. When she wasn't in class or at the clinic, she was volunteering at the food pantry, ensuring that no one in Pine Grove went hungry. Her work was not just about offering medical care or providing food. It was about building relationships, about helping people feel seen and heard. Lydia had learned the true meaning of empathy, and it had become the cornerstone of everything she did. Her work at the clinic was a testament to the resilience of Pine Grove's residents, who faced challenges with dignity and grace. One evening, after a particularly long shift at the clinic, Lydia received a phone call that would change everything. It was from the Regional Health Board, informing her that she had been selected for a prestigious fellowship in community health. The fellowship would cover her final year of education and provide a platform for her to implement her ideas for improving healthcare access in rural areas. When Lydia received the news, she felt as though everything she had worked for, every sacrifice, every late-night studying, had led to this moment. It was the opportunity she had dreamed of, and it was all within reach. But as she reflected on her journey, she realized that the true reward was not the fellowship itself, but the people who had supported her along the way. "Mom, this is it," she exclaimed to her mother, who had been a constant source of support through the years. "I got the fellowship. I can finish my degree and start making real change." Her mother's eyes shone with pride. "I always knew you could do it, Lydia. You've always had the heart and the determination. This is just the beginning." James, watching from the sidelines, felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. He had watched Alex and Lydia grow into the people they were today, and he knew their future was bright. But it wasn't just their futures that had been altered, it was the entire town of Pine Grove. The community had come together in a way that would have been impossible without the spark that had been ignited by one simple act of kindness. Over the past year, Pine Grove had transformed from a town struggling to survive to a thriving, interconnected community. New businesses had opened, and the local school had received funding for advanced STEM programs, many of which were inspired by Alex's work. Lydia had become a trusted leader in the town, helping not just with healthcare, but with organizing initiatives to improve the lives of the less fortunate. The food pantry had grown, now serving a larger portion of the community, and Lydia's work had even inspired similar initiatives in neighboring towns. James couldn't help but marvel at the change. What had begun as a random encounter on the side of a road had become something much bigger, something that had altered the course of his life, as well as the lives of Alex, Lydia, and Pine Grove as a whole. He had come to Pine Grove hoping to do something good, but in the process, he had discovered a new way of living, a new way of seeing the world. One evening, James drove out to Pine Grove once again, this time with a specific purpose in mind. He wanted to visit Alex and Lydia, to see the tangible results of his quiet efforts, and to reaffirm the bonds that had been forged between them. When he arrived at the Carter home, he was greeted with warm smiles and open arms. Alex, now preparing for his move to university, had grown taller and more confident. Lydia, with her new fellowship and growing sense of purpose, radiated a quiet strength. Together, they had created something truly remarkable. James sat with them in the garden, the same garden Alex had tended with his mother for years. The air was warm, and the evening sun cast a golden glow over the small house. For the first time in a long while, James felt at peace. "I never could have imagined this when I first met you," James said, his voice sincere. "I thought I was just helping with a flat tire, but what I didn't realize was that you two were going to change my life too. You've taught me so much about generosity, about community, about what it really means to give." Alex and Lydia exchanged a look, their faces soft with understanding. "We're the ones who should be thanking you," Alex said. "If it weren't for your kindness, none of this would have been possible." Lydia nodded. "You gave us more than we could have ever asked for. You gave us a chance." James smiled, feeling the weight of those words settle deeply in his heart. The truth was, the Carters had given him something far more valuable than anything he had given them. They had shown him the true power of kindness, the beauty of selflessness, and the importance of never underestimating the potential of others. And as he sat there with them, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he knew that this was the legacy he would leave behind. The legacy of kindness, of connections built not on wealth or status, but on the simple, powerful act of helping another human being. The story of Pine Grove, of Alex and Lydia, of James and his newfound sense of purpose would live on long after they were gone, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the world.